The crystal champagne flute shattered on the marble floor of the grand ballroom, silencing the orchestra with the punctuation of a gunshot. Every eye in the glittering, high society gala turned Ruth, her small, frail body draped in the simple black and white uniform she had worn for nearly 60 years, stood trembling amid the glittering shards. Eleanor Carter, the family matriarch, turned from the senator she was charming, her diamond necklace, a cold constellation against her surgically tightened skin, glittered like chips of ice. Her voice, though barely a whisper, sliced through the sudden silence. "You clumsy old fool," she hissed, her painted-on smile never wavering. "You are embarrassing the family." Daniel Carter, the billionaire scion and the man of the hour, quickly stepped down from the small podium. His handsome face was etched with concern, not for the spilled champagne, but for the maid who had practically raised him. "Mother, please. It was just an accident. Ruth, are you all right? Don't worry about this." He moved to help her, but Eleanor put a manicured hand on his chest, stopping him. "Daniel, do not coddle the help. She has ruined the launch of your father's foundation." Ruined? The word was not a whisper. It was a crackle, a dry, brittle sound that came from Ruth's chest. She had not spoken above a deferential mumble in 36 years. The sound of her own voice, raw and unfamiliar, seemed to startle even her. She lifted her head, and for the first time her eyes, clouded with age but now burning with a sudden, terrifying fire, met Eleanor's. "You speak of ruin, Eleanor." Ruth's voice grew stronger, vibrating with an intensity that rooted everyone to the spot. The guests stared, transfixed by the unfolding drama. "This was not on the program. How dare you?" Eleanor spat, her composure cracking. The mask of the gracious hostess was slipping. "You are dismissed. Security, remove this woman from my house." "My house?" Ruth took a shaky step forward, ignoring the crunch of glass under her worn shoe. "This house? This house was built on my silence. This family, this fortune." She gestured to the opulent room. "It's all built on a grave." Daniel looked back and forth between the two women, his confusion turning to a dawning dread. "Ruth, what are you talking about?" "What grave?" Eleanor's face had gone pale beneath her expensive makeup. "She's senile. She's lost her mind. Get her out." "I haven't lost my mind, Eleanor. I just finally found my tongue," Ruth declared, her voice now a commanding roar that filled the ballroom. She pointed a gnarled, trembling finger directly at the matriarch. "Ask her," Ruth shouted to Daniel. "Ask your mother what really happened 36 years ago. Ask her why your father really vanished. Ask her what's buried under the 1987 vintage in the wine cellar." "Ruth, stop!" Daniel pleaded, a cold sweat breaking on his brow. "You want the truth, Daniel?" Ruth's eyes bored into his. "You're launching a foundation in his name, but you don't even know him. You want the truth about the great Thomas Carter?" She took a deep, rattling breath, drawing in all the air in the room. The silence was absolute. "I buried your husband," she screamed, her words directed at Eleanor. "I buried him with my own hands." The words, the accusation, the sheer, impossible horror of the confession, hit Daniel Carter like a physical blow. The room tilted. His hand flew to his chest, grabbing at his expensive tuxedo. He tried to speak, but only a gasp escaped. He looked at his mother, and in that split second he saw it. Not outrage, not confusion. He saw pure, cold, reptilian fear. He saw the truth. The world dissolved into blackness. Daniel Carter, the last heir to the Carter billions, collapsed to the marble floor. The heir lay unconscious, his life hanging by a thread, surrounded by the wreckage of a secret 36 years in the keeping. But to understand the earthquake that had just toppled a dynasty, we must go back. Back before the party, before the collapse, to the moments that lit the fuse. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, as the truth is about to be unearthed. 2 hours earlier, the Carter mansion was a hive of frantic, controlled activity. Beneath the shimmer of crystal and the scent of 1,000 white roses, the air was thick with a tension only Ruth could feel. It was the same tension that had lived in her bones since 1987. Eleanor Carter, then as now, was a tyrant of perfection. She glided through the ballroom, a general inspecting her troops. "Pathetic," she snapped, running a gloved finger along a gilded mirror. "Is this the standard we accept?" "I see dust." Ruth was in the corner polishing the heavy, ornate silver. She polished it every week, but tonight it felt different. Heavier. She was polishing the silver for Thomas Carter's memorial. A memorial for a man she knew wasn't missing. Ruth. Ruth jumped, nearly dropping a priceless serving fork. Eleanor was standing over her, her perfume suffocating. "You're still here," Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. "I thought you'd have retired by now. Or expired." "Ma'am," Ruth whispered, her eyes on the floor. I wanted to see this." "The foundation. For Mr. Thomas." Eleanor's laugh was like ice cubes rattling in a glass. "Of course you did. You always did have a soft spot for him. Don't smudge that. It was my husband's favorite set." It was a deliberate twist of the knife. A reminder of who had won. A reminder of the secret they shared. Eleanor knew the power she held over the old maid. She had used it to ensure 36 years of perfect, terrified silence. Ruth nodded, mute, and fled to the sanctuary of the staff kitchen. She gripped the cold, stainless steel counter, her knuckles white. "My husband's favorite," the words echoed. It wasn't just silver she had polished. It was a lie. A deep, dark, suffocating lie. Ruth stood in the kitchen, 2 hours before the party, her knuckles white on the stainless steel counter. The weight of the 36-year-old lie was a physical pressure in her chest. A stone she had carried since 1987. Tonight, it had become too heavy to bear. She looked at her hands, gnarled and spotted with age. They hadn't always been this way. The kitchen dissolved, the bright, modern stainless steel fading into the warm, dark wood of a different time. The year is 1987. Ruth is 30 years old. Her back is straight, her movements quick and sure. She hums as she dusts the grand library, her heart light. She is in love. Not with a dream, but with a man. Thomas Carter. He wasn't like Eleanor, who saw the staff as furniture. Thomas saw her. He brought her small secret gifts. A single rose left in the pantry, a book of poetry tucked under a pillow. He was a kind man trapped in a cold, loveless marriage to a woman who loved only his name. His laughter was the only real warmth in the cavernous mansion, and Eleanor even then was a creature of ice and jealousy. She watched everything, her eyes sharp and possessive. She knew her husband's heart was drifting, and she suspected exactly where it had gone. The night it happened, the air was thick with a coming storm. Ruth was finishing her duties when she heard the voices from the library. Not talking, shouting, this was new. Thomas never ever raised his voice. She crept to the heavy oak door, pushing it open just a crack. "Cannot live this lie anymore, Eleanor." Thomas's voice was strained, desperate. He was standing by the fireplace, a packed suitcase at his feet. "Lie?" Eleanor's laugh was a sharp, brittle thing. "This is our life. The parties, the prestige, the Carter name. You are not going to throw that away for her." "She is a good, kind woman," Thomas said, his voice dropping low. "More of a woman, more of a human than you have ever been. She is the help." Eleanor shrieked, her face a mask of rage. A nothing." "She is the woman I love," Thomas said, the words hanging final in the air. "And I am leaving you. I am leaving with her tonight." He turned to grab his suitcase. Eleanor's eyes darted around the room, landing on the heavy crystal decanter on the desk. His favorite, the one he filled with brandy every evening. "No," she whispered. "You are not." Ruth saw the flash of movement. Eleanor, with a primal scream of rage, lifted the decanter high above her head and brought it down on the back of Thomas's skull. The sound was not loud. It was a sickening, wet thud. Thomas stiffened. He made a small, surprised sound, a gasp. He turned, his eyes wide with shock, looking not at his killer but past her toward the door. He saw Ruth. He tried to speak, his hand reaching out, then he fell, crashing to the expensive Persian rug. He did not move again. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of the crystal decanter slipping from Eleanor's hand and thudding onto the carpet. Ruth stumbled into the room, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle her own scream. "Mr. Thomas?" Eleanor turned, her breathing heavy. Her expression was not one of panic. It was one of cold, terrifying clarity. She looked at Thomas on the floor, then at the trembling, horrified maid. "You," Eleanor whispered, her voice a razor. She pointed a finger at Ruth. "You did this." "Me?" Ruth's world was spinning. "No, I just, your filth, your pathetic, disgusting little affair. You made me do this." Eleanor advanced on her. "You killed him." "No," Ruth cried, tears of terror and grief blurring her vision. "Who do you think they will believe, little bird?" Eleanor's voice was pure venom. "It is 1987, you are a black maid. I am Eleanor Carter. I will tell them I found you here, standing over his body with this decanter." She nudged it with her shoe. "I will tell them you flew into a rage when he spurned your advances. They will love that story." The threat was a physical thing, suffocating Ruth. She thought of her mother, her younger sisters. They would be ruined. She would be jailed or worse. She was trapped. She saw her entire life, her family's future, ending in this room. "Now," Eleanor commanded, her voice suddenly devoid of all emotion. "You will help me." "Help you?" Ruth choked out. It is ruining the rug." The terror was so profound it became obedience. The next 3 hours were a blur of cold, numbing horror. Together they wrapped Thomas Carter's body in the priceless rug. Together they dragged him, step by agonizing step, down the service stairs, down into the cold, damp, sprawling wine cellar. Eleanor pointed to a recessed alcove, hidden behind a towering rack of 1950s Bordeaux, where a pile of bricks and mortar had been left from an old foundation repair. "There, no one ever comes this far back. We will wall it up." They worked in the damp chill, the only sounds their heavy breathing and the scrape of the trowel. Ruth's tears mixed with the mortar as she laid the bricks, walling in the man she loved. When the last brick was in place, Eleanor grabbed Ruth's chin, her nails digging into her skin. "You will go upstairs and clean the library. You will serve me my breakfast in the morning. You will watch his son grow up, and you will never, ever breathe a word of this. This secret will be your penance. If you do," she smiled, a terrible, thin-lipped grimace, "I will destroy what is left of your life. Do you understand?" Ruth, broken and empty, could only nod. The memory faded. Ruth was back in the modern kitchen 36 years later. The chill of that wine cellar had never left her bones. And tonight, at the party for the man she had buried, she could feel the last brick of her silence finally starting to crack. Ruth's mind snapped back from the cold, damp cellar of 1987 to the bright, chaotic present of the grand ballroom. The memory of her final, soul-crushing nod to Eleanor fueled the fire that had just erupted. Daniel Carter was on the floor, paramedics swarming around him, a ripple of screams and panicked whispers spreading through the horrified guests. Did he have a heart attack? What did she say? She said she buried him. Eleanor, for a split second, was frozen. Her son, her heir, the symbol of her victory, was pale and still on the marble. But panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Self-preservation, the same instinct that had made her lift the decanter 36 years ago, took over. "He's ill," she shrieked at the paramedics. "Get him to the hospital. And someone get this insane woman out of my sight." She turned on Ruth, her face a mask of furious, theatrical grief. "You see what you've done? You've killed him. You lunatic!" 2 security guards grabbed Ruth's frail arms. But the woman who had been a ghost for 3 decades was now an immovable object. "I didn't kill him," Ruth said, her voice shaking but devoid of fear. She locked eyes with Eleanor, a cold, righteous fury radiating from her. I just told the truth about the man you killed. The paramedics were wheeling a barely conscious Daniel out of the ballroom. The guests were fleeing, scrambling for the exits, desperate to escape the toxic, unbelievable scene. But one guest, a city councilman with connections, had already called the police. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," one guard said, pulling at Ruth. "Let her go." The voice was new. It was calm, authoritative, and it cut through Eleanor's hysterics. Detective Harding, a man whose weary face had seen every kind of depravity the city's elite could offer, stepped through the grand archway, flanked by two uniformed officers. He'd been working security at the senator's table. "I am Eleanor Carter," she snapped, rounding on him. "This woman, this employee, has had a psychotic break. She assaulted my son with these lies. I want her arrested." Harding looked from Eleanor's vibrating rage to Ruth's strange, preternatural calm. He'd learned to trust the calm, not the hysterics. "Mrs. Carter, I heard the accusation," Harding said, his voice flat. "That's a very specific, very serious claim." "Ma'am," he turned to Ruth. "What exactly did you mean by that?" Ruth took a shaky breath. "I meant what I said. Thomas Carter didn't vanish. He's here. He's been here for 36 years. In the wine cellar. Behind the 1950s Bordeaux, there's a brick wall. A false wall. We built it. She made me build it. After a wall? In the cellar?" Harding's eyes narrowed. Lies. All lies. Eleanor was practically vibrating. "I will not have my house torn apart because of the delusions of a senile maid. Get out, all of you, get out." "Mrs. Carter," Harding said, unholstering his radio. "If what she's saying is a lie, you have nothing to worry about. We'll just take a look, and you can press charges for trespassing and harassment. But if you obstruct a potential homicide investigation—" He let the threat hang in the air. Eleanor's face went white. She was trapped. "Fine," she spat. "Go search the whole cellar." She waved her hand. "Filthy cellar. Find nothing. And then I will have your badge." "Harris," Harding said to one officer, "you and Miller go with her. Get a crowbar from the kitchen." He turned to the other officer. "Stay with Mrs. Carter. Do not let her leave this room." Eleanor looked for the first time like the animal she was, cornered and desperate. The journey to the cellar was silent. Ruth led, her steps, which had been so frail, now eerily steady. She, Harding, and the two officers descended the stairs, past the modern temperature-controlled racks, and into the old, damp, stone-floored section of the original manor. "There," Ruth pointed with a trembling finger. Behind that rack, Harding and Harris moved the heavy, dust-covered rack of priceless wine. Behind it, just as she'd said, was a section of wall. The brickwork was crude, amateurish, starkly different from the 19th century stone that surrounded it. "My God," Harris whispered. "Open it," Harding ordered. The first blow of the crowbar against the mortar was a cannon shot in the silence. It took 10 minutes. 10 minutes of grunting, scraping, and the crack of breaking bricks. A cold, musty air, devoid of life, wafted from the growing hole. Harding shone his flashlight inside. The beam landed on the rotted, moldering fibers of a dark red Persian rug, and protruding from it a human hand. The bones, stark white, still wore a heavy gold signet ring, the Carter family crest glinting in the beam. "Call the coroner," Harding said, his voice thick. Upstairs, Eleanor paced the ballroom floor like a caged panther. The second officer found the decanter, still on the library desk after 36 years. He found something else, too. Tucked in the back of her desk drawer beneath stock certificates were her diaries. He opened one dated October 1987. The elegant, looping script read, "He was going to leave me. For her, he will never leave this house. No one will." As Harding ascended the stairs, his face grim, the officer met him at the door, diary in hand. Eleanor saw the book. She saw Harding's eyes. The fight drained out of her. The mask of 36 years didn't just crack. It disintegrated. She collapsed onto a velvet chaise, a dry, racking sob escaping her. "Eleanor Carter," Harding said. "You are under arrest for the murder of Thomas Carter." The antiseptic smell of the private hospital room was the first thing that cut through the fog. The second was the rhythmic electronic beep of a heart monitor. Daniel Carter's eyes fluttered open. The opulent ballroom, the shattering glass, Ruth's screaming face, it all came rushing back like a physical blow. "My mother," he croaked, trying to sit up. "Ruth. She attacked my mother." "Your mother is safe, Mr. Carter. She's in custody." Daniel's head snapped toward the voice. Detective Harding sat in the corner of the room, his face etched with a professional weariness that offered no comfort. "Custody? For what?" Daniel's mind raced. "For her own protection. You have to find Ruth. She's dangerous. Ruth Williams is also in custody, son," Harding said, his voice gentle but firm. "She's giving a statement. A 36-year-old statement." "I don't understand," Daniel whispered, but the cold dread rising in his chest told him that he did. He just didn't want to. Ruth's words. They were just the ramblings of a sick old woman. "We found him, Mr. Carter," Harding said, leaving no room for doubt. "We found your father, exactly where she said he would be. In the wine cellar. He's been there since 1987. Daniel stared blankly at the detective, the words failing to compute. No, my father." "He vanished. He left us." "He never left," Harding said, leaning forward. "Your mother murdered him. She hit him with a crystal decanter, and she coerced Ruth, a young, terrified maid, into helping her bury the body and wall it up. We found the murder weapon. We also found your mother's diaries from that year." Harding didn't need to read them. Daniel saw the truth in the man's tired eyes. The foundation launch, the speeches, his entire life's work, honoring the legacy of a man he thought had abandoned him, was a sham. His family name, the source of all his power and wealth, was a shield for a brutal domestic murder. His mother, the cold, perfect matriarch, was a killer. And Ruth, the quiet, gentle woman who had ironed his school uniforms and snuck him cookies, had been their prisoner. Daniel Carter turned his head toward the sterile white wall and, for the first time since he was a child, he wept. The trial of Eleanor Carter was a media circus. It was the trial of the decade, a sensationalist feast of wealth, sex, racism, and a long-buried secret. The media painted Eleanor as a modern-day Gorgon, a cold-blooded socialite who had killed for prestige. She, in turn, tried to paint Ruth as a bitter, jealous lover, but the evidence was irrefutable. The diary, the coroner's report detailing the blunt force trauma, and finally, Ruth's own testimony. Ruth, small and trembling on the stand, was no longer the screaming specter from the ballroom. She was just a woman unburdened. She told the court not just what happened, but why she had stayed silent. "It was 1987, she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I was a black woman. She was Eleanor Carter. Who would have believed me? She told me she would ruin me, that she would ruin my family. I had sisters. I had a mother. I was so scared." She looked at the jury. "So I buried him, and I buried myself with him. For 36 years. Daniel sat in the front row every day, forcing himself to watch. He refused to look at his mother, who sat at the defense table, her glamour gone, replaced by the pinched, haggard face of a cornered animal. The verdict was swift, guilty of murder in the second degree. At the sentencing, the judge looked down at the once powerful Eleanor Carter. "You used your power, your wealth, and the color of a woman's skin to not only take a life but to steal another one. You imprisoned Ruth Williams in a jail of fear for 36 years. This court sentences you to 25 years to life in prison. For her cooperation and testimony, and in light of the extreme duress and coercion she had endured, Ruth Williams was sentenced to time served for her role in concealing the crime. She was, finally, free." 3 months later, Ruth walked out of the county jail with a single cardboard box holding her few possessions. She squinted in the bright afternoon sun. A free woman with nowhere to go. A dark, understated sedan pulled up to the curb. Daniel Carter got out. He was thinner. His expensive suit replaced with simple slacks and a button-down shirt. The arrogance of the billionaire was gone, replaced by a deep, somber gravity. "Ruth," he said. "Mr. Daniel," she replied, her voice cautious. They stood in silence for a moment, the chasm of 36 years between them. He started, his voice thick. "I can never apologize for her. There are no words. But I can apologize for my part. For living in that house. For not seeing. For not knowing." "You were a child, Daniel," she said softly. "You were a victim, too." He shook his head. "I'm not a child anymore." He opened the passenger door for her. "Will you let me drive you?" She hesitated, then nodded, getting into the car. They drove away from the jail, leaving the past behind. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To the new foundation," he said. "I liquidated everything. The company, the accounts, the mansion. I had it torn down to the studs. It was a monument to a crime." He pulled up to a modest, clean new building in the city. The sign on the front didn't say the Carter Foundation. It read, "The Thomas and Ruth Lexington Foundation." "It's for victims," Daniel explained, turning to her. "Victims of coercion, wrongful accusations, and people silenced by power. It will be their voice, the one you were never allowed to have." Ruth looked at her name etched in stone. She looked at Daniel, a man finally free of his inheritance. She took a deep, shuddering breath, her first real breath of freedom. The secret was buried, but this time something new and good was being built on top of it. Justice may take time, but it always finds a way. If you believe the truth must always be revealed, subscribe to our channel for more stories where secrets are unearthed and justice is served.